Have you ever wondered why some people seem to learn English so quickly while others struggle for years? The truth is, it's not about talent or luck. It's about using the right methods. And one of the most powerful methods is reading. Now, before you think reading is boring or old-fashioned, let me stop you right there. Reading is not just about books. It's about unlocking new words, discovering natural grammar, and training your brain to think in English without even realizing it. In this episode of TWS English Podcast, we'll explore how reading can completely transform the way you learn English and how you can use it every single day to improve. Why reading matters for learning English. Most learners focus only on speaking and listening. Of course, those are important, but reading gives you a foundation that makes everything else easier. When you read, you don't just see words, you see how they live inside real sentences. You see how ideas connect, how emotions are expressed, and how people actually use the language. Think about it this way. If speaking is like playing music out loud, then reading is like practicing with the sheet music. It shows you the notes, the rhythm, and the flow. Once you've seen it often enough, you can perform naturally without overthinking. Expanding your vocabulary naturally. One of the biggest struggles for learners is vocabulary. Many try memorizing endless lists of words, but here's the problem. Memorization doesn't teach you how words are really used. Reading solves this. For example, imagine you're reading an article that says, "The children were overjoyed when their parents surprised them with a picnic in the park." Even if you've never seen the word overjoyed before, the sentence gives you clues. The children are at a picnic. Their parents surprised them. It must mean something like very happy. You don't need a dictionary to understand the feeling.
That's the magic of reading. You learn words in context. And here's another bonus. You start to see groups of words that mean similar things. In different texts, you may find overjoyed, glad, thrilled, delighted, cheerful. Each carries a slightly different feeling, but together they make your English richer and more expressive. Understanding grammar without studying rules. Let's be honest. Grammar books can sometimes feel like puzzles with too many pieces, but when you read, grammar stops being a headache and starts becoming natural. Picture this. You come across the sentence, "By the time she arrived, the movie had already started." Even if you don't fully know the rule of past perfect tense, your brain notices the structure. Over time, with more reading, you'll automatically start forming sentences like that without forcing yourself to memorize rules. The more you read, the more your brain absorbs grammar patterns, articles, prepositions, verb tenses, sentence order. You won't even realize you're learning. It just happens because your mind is seeing correct English again and again. Building stronger comprehension skills. Reading isn't only about recognizing words, it's about training your brain to understand ideas in English. For instance, if you read a travel blog describing a mountain hike, you may not understand every single word, but you'll still follow the story, climbing, resting, reaching the top, enjoying the view. This skill is golden. Why? Because in real conversations, people speak quickly, sometimes unclearly, and not every word will be familiar. But if you've trained your brain through reading, you'll understand the overall meaning without panicking. You'll start focusing on key words, the tone, and the main idea, just like when you read an article or a story. Connecting reading to everyday communication. Reading doesn't just stay on the page, it sneaks into your speaking and writing too. When you read often, you begin to notice common phrases and expressions that sound natural. For example, instead of always saying, "I am very hungry," you might pick up phrases like, "I'm starving," or I could eat a horse. These are expressions you wouldn't normally find in a textbook, but they make your English sound alive and real. And when it comes to writing, reading shows you how writers organize their thoughts, use transitions, and keep readers interested. Whether it's a blog, an article, or a short story, you start borrowing their style for your own writing, making it flow more smoothly.
How reading builds cultural understanding. Learning a language isn't only about grammar and vocabulary. It's about connecting with the people who use it. Reading is like opening a window into English-speaking cultures. When you read a magazine article from Canada, you might discover how people spend their winters skiing or how they celebrate holidays in snowy weather. A short story from Australia could teach you about barbecues on the beach or the relaxed Aussie lifestyle. Even children's books from the UK might show you how important tea time is in British daily life. Each page you read gives you tiny cultural details, traditions, humor, habits that help you connect with native speakers in real life. It's not just about learning words, it's about learning people. Reading for better speaking and writing. Have you noticed how some English learners speak with confidence, while others hesitate? The secret often comes down to reading. Every time you read a dialogue in a novel, a blog comment, or even a short news interview, you are training your brain to store natural sentences. For example, when you read a line like, "Why don't we grab a coffee later?" You don't just learn the word coffee, you learn the whole pattern. Why don't we plus verb. Later in a conversation, you can use it naturally. Why don't we go for a walk? Why don't we watch a movie? This is how reading transfers directly into speaking fluency. For writing, reading shows you how ideas flow from one paragraph to another. Suppose you're reading a blog about healthy living. You notice how the writer introduces a problem, explains a solution, and ends with advice. Without even realizing it, you're learning how to structure your own writing in English, whether it's an email, an essay, or a social media post.
Here's a powerful tip. Don't just read silently. Read aloud. When you read aloud, you practice pronunciation, hear the rhythm of English, and build confidence. Try this with a short article. Read one paragraph out loud. Pay attention to which words are stressed and which are softer. For example, she finally decided to apply for the scholarship. Notice how finally and scholarship get more emphasis, while small words like she and to are lighter. This rhythm is what makes English sound natural. And here's a bonus. If you read along with an audiobook, you get double the practice. First you hear how a native speaker says it, then you repeat. It's like having a private coach guiding your pronunciation. Thinking in English through reading. One of the hardest parts of learning English is the habit of translating from your native language. Translation slows you down, but reading can fix this. When you read enough English, your brain begins to store ready-made patterns. Imagine reading a travel story where the character says, "I couldn't take my eyes off the view." Later, when you're speaking, you won't need to translate. You'll just say, "I couldn't take my eyes off that painting," or "I couldn't take my eyes off her smile." You're no longer building sentences word by word, you're using natural expressions you picked up through reading. That's how fluency develops.
When you read a long passage in English, one of the biggest mistakes is trying to remember every single word. That can make you feel lost and frustrated. Instead, focus on the message, not the exact wording. Imagine you are watching a movie. You don't remember every single line of dialogue, but you still understand the story. Reading works the same way. You need the flow, the main picture. Here's a useful method, chunking. Divide sentences into smaller groups of words that carry meaning. For example, instead of reading this sentence all at once, "The children were excited because their teacher announced a surprise trip to the Science Museum. Break it like this. The children were excited because their teacher announced a surprise trip to the Science Museum. Now, the sentence doesn't look scary anymore. You can breathe and understand better. Another powerful technique is questioning the text. After each paragraph, ask yourself, who is the main person? What is happening? Why is it happening? This keeps your brain active. Let's take an example from daily life. Imagine you're reading a news article about a new park in your city. Instead of reading passively, ask, who built the park? Why was it built? What activities can people do there? How does it help the community? Suddenly, the text becomes more alive, more personal. You are not just reading words, you are interacting with the story. Finally, let's talk about visualization. This means creating a picture in your mind while reading. If the story says, a man is walking his dog near the river during sunrise, don't just read it. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine the man, the dog, the river, and the sunrise. Visualization makes reading fun and improves memory.
Reading in English is not just about words on a page. It's about building a lifelong skill that supports your listening, speaking, and writing. Every page you read makes you stronger in all areas of language. Let's recap some key reminders to stay on track. Don't panic when a text looks long. Break it into smaller parts. Focus on the main ideas first, then details. Take notes in your own words, even short ones. Read aloud to improve pronunciation and memory. Use chunking to handle long sentences. Ask questions while reading to stay active. Visualize scenes to make stories come alive. Now, let's go one step further. Choose reading that excites you. If you love sports, read match reports. If you enjoy food, read recipes. If you like travel, explore blogs about new countries. Reading becomes easier when it connects with your interests. Another tip is set small daily goals. For example, read one paragraph from a newspaper each morning. Learn 3 new words from your book every evening. Write a 2-line summary of what you read at night. Consistency is more important than speed. Even 10 minutes of daily reading is powerful if you do it regularly. Finally, remember this. Every reader starts small. At first, you may struggle with long sentences, but slowly you will notice improvement. Be patient with yourself. Progress is not about perfection, it's about practice. So here's a challenge for you from TWS English Podcast. Pick one short text today, maybe an article, a short story, or even a page from a book, and apply these techniques. Break it down, highlight, take notes, ask questions, and visualize. You'll see how much easier it feels. Keep reading, keep practicing, and most importantly, keep enjoying the journey of English, because every page you read is one more step toward confidence and fluency.